you think?
5-4 radio. Okay, we're on the radio. Check. We're live on Facebook. Check. Mics are on. Check. I guess we can have the show now. That's right. Hey, I'm Ann Eller right here with you this morning. It's a beautiful morning outside here today after the devastation. I tell you what, one of the biggest things that I have heard that have happened, but the arcade down there on Waller on Maxwell, the roof, the ceiling crashed in, and I don't know what kind of damage that this is going to have caused, what it's going to take to rebuild the machines, the vintage machines that were in there that everybody was loving so much right next to Good Times Brewing. Of course, they got water in them, so I have no idea how this is going to work. But what a devastation with all that rain from the other night. I mean, we all heard about the tree that fell over there on Cambridge Avenue and Grace Street, and it was a miracle that it did not hit any houses. And then there is a sinkhole over on Walker Avenue. So all these things happened, but the thing where my heart goes out to is over there at the arcade, where they have had total devastation. The roof caved in, went through the ceiling, and water was everywhere. And of course, the machines and everything, I have no idea what it's going to take to rebuild that. But here this morning, that's just a little bit on that. Here this morning, we are going to be talking to Daniel Gibson, Representative Daniel Gibson. He is a House of Representatives, and he is part of our delegation down there in Columbia. He is in District 12, which encompasses part of Greenwood and McCormick. He assumed office on December 6, 2022, after defeating Democratic incumbent Ann Parks. So he's been through now 22, 23, 24. He's getting to be seasoned, let's just say that. Daniel, how you doing today?
Yeah, doing great. How are you today?
I'm very good. How was the drive up here?
Oh, I was going to say, it's flooding on 72. I got stuck over on the tree down in Cambridge, so
right.
Tell people to be careful. And I was about 5 minutes late getting here.
Right. But how
tell
about
people
over
make
there
their
in
plan
McCormick?
today.
How much?
I haven't heard of any damage in McCormick. No one has called me about that. I live between Greenwood and Bradley, so I just saw the damage coming in this morning. I said had a couple of detours going around town today, so give yourself time to get there.
Absolutely, it is. It's just I had hurricane deja vu from the other night when it was raining so hard. Oh my God! Did you have a lot of rain down there in McCormick?
Just pouring down, yeah. It's been raining about 5 days, so you can't even cut your grass.
Yeah.
Heard a guy say he got his lawnmower stuck yesterday, so had to give it up for a little while.
All right. So anyways, we are here with Daniel Gibson, and Daniel is our representative from District 12. In one sentence, what is your reaction about what happened in Columbia this session? How do you feel about things? I'm not looking for a long, I just want a quick reaction. Do you feel y'all did well? Do you feel you could have done better? I mean, what was antagonism? He is in the House of Representatives now, not in the Senate. The other day we had Billy on. He's in the Senate. Daniel is in the House. What was your opinion of this session?
In a short sentence, I'm amazed at how much we did get accomplished this time. I remember this is my third year. My first year down there, I know it was a learning curve, or right. I just felt like things were just dragging out. This year, we were just popping bills out left and right. And if there's people that watch us on TV, I've had comments on this before. They said, you guys will vote for 30 bills in 30 minutes or an hour. Mm-hmm. But we've been studying those bills for sometimes a year or sometimes 2 years. So I want them to know that we're actually looking at what we're doing, and we're taking it very seriously. It goes through committee. There's a long process. But I was amazed at how much we got done and how quickly we got it done.
What do you think was one of the biggest accomplishments that actually was a bill that became a law?
I'd say my biggest accomplishment, but it hadn't been signed by the governor yet, but it's one of the most important things to me.
Right.
It went through the House, and I've got it marked as one of the greatest accomplishments down there, is our fight to end DEI practices and promoting merit in South Carolina. And we did that. Actually, we do it through funding, just by telling these schools and these businesses, if you're going to operate with with the DEI mandate and with the DEI intellect, we're just not going to fund you. And I've heard it called reverse racism. I've heard it called everything in the world. But I have a quote here that someone once said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character." And to me, that is accountability.
That was Martin.
That is merit-based.
That was Martin Luther King.
Yes, it was Martin
That's
Luther
right.
King.
Yes.
But I had somebody in the house that told me one time I couldn't quote Martin Luther King, but I can.
Why?
I don't
Now you're
know.
on WCRS.
They didn't like it.
Of course.
I've used that quite, and I used it on the DEI argument, and they didn't like that. But to me, that is accountability.
Wait a minute. Who was that? I mean, what kind of person was this that wouldn't want that same type of thing for everybody?
That's exactly what he meant. I mean, to me, that is accountability. That is merit-based. That is character, and that is not DEI.
Right.
So we get attacked on it all the time in the House. The Republicans do.
Right.
And mostly it's by the Democrats, and I love them. I get along with great. There's probably 1 or 2 I just don't get along with, but there's 1 or 2 Republicans I don't get along with either.
Right.
But to me, that statement tells you in a nutshell that DEI is not right for this nation. It's not right for people. I don't think it's right in God's eyes. I got tickled the other night. I'll try not to preach, but I got tickled when Senator Garrett at the meeting said, "Well, I'm not going to preach to you," and then I proceed to preach. But this just isn't right.
Right.
And we fight this tooth and nail every day in the House.
Well,
And it's almost funny when you hear the arguments against it because they don't make a bit of sense.
Well, if you just look at some of the problems, and you're a pilot, just look at the problems we're having with air traffic controllers, being short and not having appropriately qualified maybe people in those offices. We have got to get back to merit, where merit counts, and capable people doing the job. We want that in any job that we hire for.
I think merit is the only thing that matters, and to deny that is just absurd to me. Like you said about a pilot, if I'm flying cross country, I want the absolute best pilot Delta has that day for that shift. I don't care if he's Asian, if he's Indian, if he's black, I don't care if he's white. I just want the best person you have.
You don't care if he's white?
I don't care if he's white. I'll even take a white boy. I want the best you've got that day, and you're going to see it more and more. And I think that's what happened to the Dems on the federal level. They pushed so hard against the DEI thing that it came back to bite them in the butt, on a lot of elections.
So,
but the average person doesn't think that way. The average person thinks, I want the best I can get,
Absolutely. But that did that actually pass the Senate? Is that going to be a law, or it did not pass? It's
to quote John McCraby,
yeah,
sitting in Senate Judiciary.
Right. Okay.
I made a note, and I got so tickled the other night at the meeting, but I've got notes on here where it is on each item.
Yeah,
but it's sitting in this, and I'm not blaming Billy Garrett. Billy Garrett works his tail off down there and does an outstanding job.
Oh, wait a minute. He has not worked his tail off. I'm sorry.
He's trying to. So I got tickled the other night.
He does not work his tail off. He's got ample tail. Let's just put it that way. That's what I was referring to.
When I say it's sitting in the Senate, we call it in the House, we call it down, and hope Billy's listening, we're going to send this to the Senate to die a slow death. But that's on bills we don't like. But I like this bill, and I would like to see something done with it, but just didn't wrapped up in time, and their excuses always where we ran out of time,
I will say from one thing about the Senate and the House that to see all this flurry of activity at the very end when you've been down there since January is a little disturbing. Why should it have to wait till all the way to the end? And then you see quite often stuff just being pushed through and not pushed through well.
I don't like that either, but actually what you're seeing, like I said, on TV or in the news or different things, you're not seeing the committee work. And a lot of this stuff does sit in committee, and it's not just dragging it out. It's really nitpicking it. I sit on the agriculture, environmental, wildlife. I sit on the wildlife. I sit on interstate commerce. And we will argue for or debate for 2 hours over one word. We had something come up that they had to do with digging your own well, and they had the price in there that if it's an economic advantage, you can do it. I wanted to add the word quality, and just to add that word, that would have gone in this year. But because I wanted to add the word quality, that you as a homeowner should decide if the quality of water you're getting from a municipality is fit for you to drink,
right,
it's going to go to next year. A Democrat shot it down, said, I don't think we should add that. So it stopped it cold. So one word, one comma, one jot or tittle can stop something in its tracks if there's enough opposition against it. So, but to let you know, I think if you're a landowner and you want to dig a well because the quality of the water is nasty,
right,
you should be able to dig a well.
Right.
But they made a big deal out of that one word. But then I found out why. They're in cahoots with the municipalities in some of these larger cities.
So they want to be able to control the water that you're drinking and get money from you for this purpose.
Yeah, they don't care if it's quality water.
Yeah, they don't care.
And then they want to argue who decides the quality. I do. I'm the consumer. I decide if it's good quality or not. Yes. But and that's an absurd example, but it's true, and it can shut something down for an entire year.
Well, that is true. And, you know, one of the bills, and you may not be able to speak to this, but I'm a little surprised that one of the questions that came in when Billy was here the other day is about why municipalities cannot use credit unions for their deposits.
Yeah, I've heard of that, but I don't know anything about that bill.
I mean, that.
So is
that
it something the Simmons
like,
came up with?
Yeah. Well, it hasn't gone anywhere. I don't remember where it was at. But the bottom line is, this again sounds like a banking lobbyist controlling. We don't want that money to go to your local municipality's money to be sitting in a credit union when we can control it with it being put in a bank.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way they.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't care if it's at Willie's house in a safe, as long as it's taken care of and accounted for. But yeah, that sounds like somebody has a special interest, like with the gambling bill we talked about the other night. And,
right.
You know, special interests do have their way. And John and my friends, they keep talking about all the money. I've never seen a penny of it down there. They can't even buy us a cup of coffee legally. Mm-hmm. But I've never had anyone approach me to offer me campaign money or to do any of those things. So I'm not sure where all that's coming from. But there are special interests that they just want to sit down with you and.
I thought there was that gal that tried to get you on the gambling bill to vote for.
They did, but they didn't offer me any money.
Okay.
But they talked for like 2 minutes for their spiel.
Didn't you shut her down?
I shut her down fast. I said, I'm not going to vote for it, and John McCravy's not going to vote for it either. Good day.
Well, that's the problem. You didn't give them a chance to give you their spiel and tell you what they are going to give you. So,
while you're there, though, I can't let that go. Billy mentioned that what they will give us is the money will not stay in the state of South Carolina.
Wait a minute. You're talking about
on the
gambling bill.
Yeah.
Right, yes.
What they will give us is money leaving people's houses that can't afford to be doing it. What they'll give us is prostitution. What they'll give us is more drug problems. And I'm glad Billy brought that up in the meeting the other night, too, because it's not just a matter of you and I going out and dropping $50 on, at the casino in one night. It has a devastating effect on South Carolina. And I've told you this before. If I had my way, we would shut down the lottery. I think it's a tax on the poor and the stupid. So if you're just buying a ticket right now, you got to decide which category you're in. And I'm not going to sign for anything that has to do with gambling in South Carolina. So I shut them down fast.
Do you think, though, I mean, really, Daniel, do you think that we should legislate morality? And that is, I mean, that is a moral decision. If if it's my money, should I be able to spend it? I'm not saying that I'm for or against. I'm just putting up a hypothetical. Should I be told that I cannot spend my money on gambling if that's what I want to do?
I had a gentleman that sits right in front of me, Representative Moss, say that the other day. He's been out 20 years. He said, we can't legislate morality. My answer is we do it every day.
Okay.
We do it every single day.
Why do you say that you do that every day?
Because we pass laws that affect people's lives every day. We tell you, fentanyl. We tell you if you're a drug dealer and you sell somebody that's got fentanyl, if you sell somebody drugs with fentanyl in and they die, you can be held liable for murder. So that's a morality decision there, and we do it with other examples. That may not be a good example, but it's the first one that came to my head.
Right.
But we legislate morality every day. We tell you what you can and cannot do, whether you like it or not, whether it's right or wrong, we do it. And I don't always like it either.
But do you think we should be telling people how they can spend their money?
Personally, I agree with you. It makes sense that why should you be telling me what to do? Same thing with the abortion bill. We've argued about that for years. Who am I to tell you what to do with your 12-year-old daughter or with your child? But if you're so dumb that with the thing with mutilation on the child, mutilating the child.
No, you're talking
have
about
we got to tell you that it's not okay to cut the genitalia off a 12-year-old boy? Is that a morality issue, or are you just ignorant? I was called a liar for saying that. I said I couldn't spell mutilation. I can, and but it was such a dumb statement. I just let it go. But whether we like it or not, I think we do legislate morality all the time in the House. I think, and there's one of the bills that we passed was to cut back on regulations. We regulate people way, way too much.
Correct.
But the problem that I have in my district is 50-50. There's guys like John that have a 75% majority on the Republican side. I'm 50-50. It's like calling the ball game.
You're talking about between
the Dems and Republicans.
Right.
And the bad thing about that, it's like being an umpire in a ball game. Mm-hmm. Every call I make, somebody's upset with. I hear it every single day. I can't believe you voted for this. I can't believe you didn't vote for this. But what I have learned, the people sit me down there, and it is the people's seat. It's not it's not Daniel Gibson's seat. Mm-hmm. It's the people's seat. But I have to weigh morality. I have to weigh what I believe in my heart is right and wrong and is the right thing to do for the people of South Carolina, not just my district. And a lot of people focus on their district, but every vote I make, if I make a vote today, it doesn't just affect Greenwood. It affects somebody in Charleston. It affects somebody in Greenville.
Well, who do you take your cues from, though, when you vote?
Who do I take my cues from?
Right. When you go to vote on a bill, what is your decision-making process on that?
My heart, my gut feeling, the information I have gathered. Like I said, we're sitting there making votes. You're just watching us, bam, bam, bam. We're knocking them out. But a lot of these bills I've studied for a year. I've read the fiscal impact on them. I've read the entire bill, maybe 4 or 5 times, and I've had people change my mind in discussion. I reckon it more, and I've learned this since the longer I'm there. It's almost like sitting on a jury. You may have 12 people on the jury, and everybody hears the same facts, but you get 5 yays and 7 nays. So that's how I do it. I take all the facts that are given to me. I look at the fiscal impact that it's going to have for South Carolina. The gambling will take money out of this state. It will create a few jobs. It will do that. And so I consider all of that when I make a decision. And it's a big deal. But John and I, and we laugh about it. John and I don't always agree on everything.
Right.
He looks at things. I'm a pilot. He's an attorney. He looks at things sometimes through an attorney's eyes. I try to look at the number one thing I try to look at is through my constituents' eyes. What's this going to do to the guy that making $20,000? What's this going to do to the guy that's starting up a business and maybe he's
talk
only
to
making.
Your constituents? Do you get their input before you vote on something? I mean, there are a lot of things, I will agree, that are very cut and dried, that really are not a problem. But there's a lot of bills out there that I think your constituents should weigh in on. Do you get information from them?
Oh yeah, I get a lot of information to them, and it's probably 50-50 both ways. I rarely get something that's one-sided. The first thing I do when I get an email or a text is to look at, is it in my district? Mm-hmm. That's my starting point, because we get these things, where you get 100 of them. There's a mass mailer on an email. It's actually. And has a negative context because we're sitting there punching off, 200 emails, bam, 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 but it's a mass mailer. I read one, I don't read the rest of them because it's the same old thing. But everything from my constituent, and another thing that I've learned, and I've always done this, and it never ceases to amaze me, someone will call me and I had this happen last week. Somebody called and cussed me out up one side and down the other. I mean, just terrible language. Mm-hmm. And it takes me an hour and a half to get to Columbia, so I would just call people back. So I called this lady back, and I said, I'm Representative Gibson. You had called me about this issue, and she acted like she was ashamed to talk to me, is the feeling that I got. She was ashamed for what she had done.
Right.
And then I heard her out. I explained the bill, and she was fine. But most of them, they just want information or they want to give their input. And I've talked with people for a solid hour. I guess I bore them because I'm driving down the road. And the first thing they say is, I can't believe you called me back. I'm like, well, you called me. I want their input, and I appreciate that. But it is amazing to me. I made the statement one time. I said, I'm getting blown up on my emails. And they said, how many emails did you get? And I'm like, I got 5 that just thinks I've lost my mind. They said, you got 44,000 people you represent. So why are you getting upset over 5?
Well, I think I think that one of the things that comes across to me the longer I do this is that our representatives need to represent our voices. That's what they're sent down there for. And so I have become very curious as to how you make a decision, how any of you make a decision, but how you get the input that you need from your district. And particularly, I mean, you've got 44,000. How do you really know what the whole district feels? I mean, that would be a problem, I would think.
I think I learned more having breakfast, going to meetings like, the GOP meeting or whatever, town hall meetings. I've got a dinner on the ground church dinner Sunday over in McCormick. I learned a lot more by being with the constituents and talking to them.
Sure. Than
I do with the emails. You may have 100 people that will come up and hug your neck, and they're all thanking you for, I appreciate so much what you did for McCormick or what you did on this bill and did on this vote. But I get it from both sides, so I'm in a tough position. But number one, I think, is just getting the facts, bringing the facts together. And we certainly don't know more than the general public does.
Correct.
But a lot of times we have experts come in and testify on both sides. I had a bill come up with a crabbing, and the big crabbers in South Carolina last year wanted more control over the crabbing industry. And I'll never forget this, and it's the way I operate down there. A little lady came in. Her family's been crabbing since the 50s, had a little 6-month-old baby on her hip, and telling her story. And she said, if y'all do this, it's going to shut me and my daddy down, and we only have one boat. I'm sitting there with tears in my eyes listening to her story. And the guy representing the big industry, he just didn't know what to say to that. But we fixed it so that they could still get what they need, but it didn't knock this small family out. Mm-hmm. And I think about the little guy all the time. Big industry can survive for themselves. They have the money to throw around, not so much in PAC donations or things like that, but just in advertising. A lot of it's just getting the word out.
Absolutely.
What they want. And
that's another thing for your district. How do you communicate with your district? How do people know where you stand on the issues?
Well, they can look at my vote. That's the simplest way, and you and I had talked about that before. I wish everybody knew how to do it, but if you'll spend 5 minutes going on the state website, you can, and it's all on one page. You can look up a bill. It'll give you the full reading of the bill. It'll give you the fiscal impact. It'll tell you what the entire vote was. Was it 109 to 0? Was it 126 to 40? It'll tell you where Daniel Gibson voted on that. And again, we don't always agree on that. John McCravey, I believe he voted for the voucher bill. I vehemently voted against the voucher bill. And, it has some good things and it has some bad times.
Why did you vote against the voucher bill?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but it actually
one.
Huh?
The major one.
Well, the first thing is it limits 10,000 students the first year. We tried this thing last time, and I'm embarrassed, and I'll tell you and the whole world, I am embarrassed that a private individual had to bail us out for the last 6 months of that session, and it wasn't done right. So the way it's going to work is set up for 25 and 26, the way the new one is proposed. There'll be a limit of 10,000 students. Then in 26 and 27, it'll go to 15,000 students. And the cost is $60 million and $90 million. Now, most politicians are going to say, well, I'm concerned about where the $60 million is coming from and where's the $90 million coming from. And I am. But my first concern is who chooses those 10,000, those first 10,000.
Correct.
And then you and I had talked about this previously, the amount of income. It was supposed to be, those that are at the lower end of the spectrum.
30,000 or something.
Yeah, and now they've quadrupled it. It's gone crazy,
Well, it's interesting the way they did it by multiplying it times the level of this. I don't, but they made it. They just didn't say if you make over 50,000 or if you make under 50,000. They have this.
That they're the percentages in, so you can't understand it.
Correct.
It makes
and
it more
yet,
complicated.
when you understand it, there's a lot of upper level people that are allowed into the program.
They are, and it's not right.
It's not right.
My daughter, and I'm not Catholic, but my daughter's husband is. My grandson went to a Catholic school, and I was so proud of my daughter for making the sacrifice to pay that out of their pocket because they believe it's a better education. Now, people will argue whether public school is good or bad or private school is better or not. That's up for the parent to decide, and to me that comes back to accountability. You should be able to make that decision. But I shouldn't have to pay somebody that's making $30,000 a year and is not sending their child there. Why should, in their taxes, they're paying for your child to go, and you're making $250,000?
Exactly.
And another big thing, and I got a lot of problems with this one. I got a lot of them. If you are a private school and you take money for us, you just got in bed with the devil. That's what I tell people. I don't think I'm the devil and I'm a heathen, but do you really want to take our money? Because we're going to come in and we're going to tell you what to do.
Exactly.
And you know that to be true.
And that is why there are a lot of nonprofits that will not take federal money, state money, because they want to be able to do and preach and do the things that they want to do.
Oh, and I agree. And they should be able to do that. That's the whole purpose of having a private institution is you're not happy, but you have a choice to make. Another thing, and I don't have facts to back this up, but I'm telling you it will happen. Get a little pencil and write it down. If we start giving private institutions state money, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year, they will up their premium.
Per student. Right? Yes, per student.
They will up their prices. I promise you.
Well, I guess we've seen that at Harvard and places like that, haven't we?
It happens all the time.
And that's the problem with the student loan for college and whatnot.
Yeah. And they also don't do special needs children. They don't have to take special needs.
And is that in this latest bill or?
No, they didn't put anything in there to be able to protect in there to protect special needs children.
Okay.
But I've had a personal experience with a friend who tried to get his daughter in, and she lasted about a week, and they said, "No, we don't have to take her." It broke her heart. But if you're going to take our money, it should be in there.
Right.
It would actually become a public school at that point because you're going to go by our rules, right? The same rules we have in a public school, you're going to have to follow. Is that what you want? Is that the individual that is willing to pay $10,000 for their child? Is that what they want? So I've got a lot of problems with the voucher bill. The thing I understand the premise.
Well, let's change this up. What would make the voucher bill good, in your opinion? How should we have a voucher bill?
Why should we have it at all? The original purpose.
What should we have in a voucher bill if you were putting it
The
together?
original purpose of the voucher bill is to take people that are in lower income areas, that are in schools that are failing, and give them an opportunity to make a decision about to send a child to a school that they can't necessarily afford. I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with the limits on how many is going to do it. It should be open. If you're going to set it by income. Just say, okay, anybody under $50,000 or whatever, the bean counters can come up with the numbers. Anybody under this amount of money will qualify for the voucher bill, and then have a few things in there that are qualifiers. One of the dumbest things that's in there now, if you're in a school district and you're not happy, you've got to send your child to a school outside the district. So you can't be in the same district. You can't just switch schools. And the first thing people tell me is, well, I can't afford to drive my child because I've got to go to Greenwood or I've got to go to Abbeville.
Right.
So if you're in McCormick and you want to send your child to Greenwood Christian, that's a 20-minute drive. And I've had people say this, who's going to pay for my gas? I threw up my hands. I thought, my God, we're paying for your education.
Right.
You know, you want us to pay for gas? But that was a question, and it's a legitimate question. You know, I flew off the handle for a second, but thinking about it, they're right. Not everybody can afford to spend an extra $60 or $70 a week in gasoline. They may not have a vehicle that will make it back and forth to Greenwood 5 days a week. There's not going to be busing. There's no busing provided in there, so it can create problems. So the simple answer is, have the bean counters come up with a dollar amount that people can qualify for. Then after that, how do you qualify? Can he be in district? Can he be out district? So there's a lot of problems with it that I think is going to have a hard road to hoe on fixing them. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get excited.
Well, that's
but I get excited about the voucher bill.
But I mean, this just goes to point on how things are done down there. Of course, they only have X amount of money that they're putting forth to that. And of course, last year, didn't that bill that became a law, and then it got scrapped, right? Because the Supreme Court.
And somebody bailed us out, and I'm ashamed of that. I'm ashamed that somebody had to bail us out.
What do you mean somebody had to bail you out?
The funding wasn't there for the latter part, so a private individual in South Carolina paid the two. That's wrong. That's
Absolutely.
wrong.
I mean,
getting back to the vouchers, though, I believe George Bush is a good example. And that's when I first started hearing about vouchers, No Child Left Behind.
Right.
And I believe that. I believe in the theory and the concept of No Child Left Behind. But that wasn't the intent when they did that, just to pass everyone along. So the biggest problem to me in all of this stuff, in education, in DEI, in the voucher system, is accountability. Nobody wants to be held accountable for anything. And to me, it starts in the school. Number one, with the parent, with the child, with the teacher, with the school board, with the principal. Nobody wants to be held accountable for anything anymore, and our world is in a chocolate mess because of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of that's absolutely true. Now, since we're talking about schools, one of the issues that has come up is this proposition, 3.1 or something on the school funding? That I think I talked to you about it the other day, where they are reducing the amount of funding going into classrooms. This was something that was done back in 2023. It's considered a budget tightening bill process. The Greenwood County in 24 got $324 million. Last year they got $200,000. This year they're getting $112 million. Those were millions. $200 million and $112 million. And I know that the state has come in and given them $225 to try to help with this, but the big problem, it seems to me, is that the amount of money that is being now distributed, it seems to be more favorably being distributed to charter schools as opposed to public schools. And so the charter schools are getting more money than what the public schools are getting. I don't think it would be as big a problem if that wasn't the case. It says the decrease in funding is problematic and self-explanatory. Also, we saw that public charter schools are getting $50,769, 165 in new money. That amount means charter schools are getting 45% of the new money with only 7.49 of the students. So they have less students, but they're getting more money.
Yes, and that right now is still, that hasn't been finalized. It's still sitting with the conferees trying to work out the details on that. But what happened, that was a model that was taken from several years ago, I think about 2023. Mm-hmm. So that's the model they were going by, and when they ran the numbers don't work. Now, also, the schools were used to getting federal money during COVID.
Right.
You know, so it's not just that one thing. And I'm not making excuses for it. My point is it hasn't been settled yet. And we're getting a lot of calls from school districts that are concerned about that. But they're still working on that right now in Columbia. But you're correct. The numbers don't jive. You know, they'll say, well, if you leave 300 students from this public school and they go to a charter school, the money follows, the model just doesn't work at this point in time. So that's about all I know about that, is that they're still working on it. It hasn't been finalized. But anytime, and one of the biggest problems with it is the school boards will come to the state and say, this is what we need.
Right.
And normally within 35 days they get an answer, okay, we've approved you for that. But then there's like a 135-day period before they get the check.
Right.
Once they get the check does not match what they had negotiated for. So that's the problem they're going to have. But I don't know a lot about that bill, but I know the gist of it. Why it's not where it needs to be is because the modeling that they used and the money's not jobbing. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
and you
right.
said something, I made a note of it. It's funny. You said it's self-explanatory. It's one of the most complicated things.
I mean,
I know you read it
from their slide here, because I was not going through the whole
but it's
slide.
one of the most complicated things that we've done down there. It's absolutely, it's crazy.
It is
the way
crazy.
The numbers work, yeah.
And so I wanted to bring this up because I know that Monday night our school board met for like 2.5 hours, and they're painstakingly, and I want to say with a lot of pain, looking at what they can cut, what they can't cut to try to make this become more fiscally responsible, looking at things that aren't necessary, but they still are going to be short. So my plea is that hopefully it's not only Greenwood, it's 96, it's Greenville, $12 million shortage.
Yeah, Greenville's getting one of the biggest cuts of anybody, I think, on the numbers I saw.
So this is something that's real important that it gets looked at and something is done in the budget on this. I think that we are going to have to they are looking at cuts here. And I mean, I watched them the other night going through each line on the budget trying to say, can we cut something out? How is this going to affect our students? How is it going to affect the teachers? Let me ask you something. I understand we have a lot of, not only teachers, but this double dipping where somebody retires and then they go back and work.
Yeah, what's that called? Terry?
Yeah, Terry.
Yeah. I don't know if that's still in effect. I've known people doing that. I know a guy that worked for the state for a long time, for like 30 or 40 years. He retired.
Right.
Left the job, took a vacation, came back. This is in Greenwood County.
Right.
Took the job, came back at full salary and double dipping on the Terry. But I don't know if that's still in effect now. That's been years ago when that came up, and I've never had an instance where I had to follow up on it to see if there's still Terry in now.
I think it is, and the only reason I say that because I know of a teacher who had retired and had gone back into the classroom, and she is going to have to retire. Because, I mean, she had to, I guess, make a choice, and she has to retire. They're not going to allow that. And that's one place that they are looking at. But I think in a lot of ways that's short-sighted, isn't it, Daniel? Because you've got teachers with great experience that have been hired back to come into the school. It's the same thing with anything, whether you're talking law enforcement, but any of these positions. to be able to have that wealth of knowledge from somebody that's been on the job is that...
To me personally, if I was a business owner, and
Right.
you've owned several businesses, and the purpose of doing that is they're supposed to bring it, really in reality, is to bring new people in at a lower price.
Right.
It's why they're trying to save money.
Right.
But I've learned, I was in construction for a while, and I've done lots of other things, including being a pilot. But when you run a business, sometimes you're better off to pay the dollars.
Exactly.
And we actually talked about this week before last. We're having a problem bringing state troopers in, law enforcement.
Yes.
That they're retiring at a mandatory age, so we're thinking about raising all that. And I don't have a problem with them making their full salary again, because you have to look at them separately. You're being paid for your time.
Correct.
And for your experience.
Exactly.
Your retirement, to me, in my mind, is totally separate from that. The state promised you, if you will do this, in 20 years, we will do this for you. So we should do that. But if you want to hire them back at full salary, just raise the age limit if that's the problem.
Right.
I don't have a problem doing that. The only downside is you may be stymieing the people on the bottom end to bringing them in. But I don't see that as a huge problem. We can't get enough teachers as it is in South Carolina.
Correct.
We're actually reworking the certification so that if you have a bachelor's degree, but you're not yet certified, you can go ahead and start teaching while you're working on your certification.
Right.
Because we have such a shortage. So I don't really see that as a problem.
I don't see it as a problem, and I see it actually as a win for the schools to be able to have somebody with the experience. Now, the schools have the right to hire who they want and who they don't want. So if they have a really good teacher who wants to come back into the school system, just retired because it was time or because they could take their money, why should they be penalized in not being able to come back in and continue working if they are good at what they do?
Yeah, they should not. That's the simple answer, right?
Right.
It doesn't make sense to you because it doesn't make sense.
Right. That's right. It
It's a
doesn't
simple
make
answer.
sense. Yes.
And if I'm on the school board, or if I'm on whoever makes those decisions, that should be my decision to make. I'd rather, which one is the most qualified? It should be the first thing, not their age, not their income, what their income requirements are.
Sure.
Who's the most qualified? Well, probably the one with the most experience is going to be the most qualified.
Sure.
Now, if you're trying to save money, you can say, well, we're going to get rid of these 10, and we're going to bring 10 in, and we can save $200,000 a year. Woohoo. Who pays for it is a child, right?
I mean, that is the problem, actually, in this budgeting.
Yeah.
That is something that they're faced with, is how do we make the budget balance? We'd have to pay this teacher this much, but we could get this teacher for this much.
Yeah.
If you can find the teacher at that lower
That's
end.
the thing. A lot of people, and we're getting, our goal is to eventually get the salary up to $52,000 starting.
Right.
That's pretty good starting. Mm-hmm. But right now I think we're at 47,
48.
I believe.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to go to 48 or something, yeah.
And we're raising that incrementally. And to me, why do that? Why not just shoot it up there straight? We started out down around 40. Why not just go straight to 52?
Well, because the state doesn't want to fork out the
don't
money.
want to spend the money, yeah. And that's another thing too. With the earmarks, to make our budget work this year, we're going to have a hard time getting earmarks. And people think of that as
no
pork.
earmarks, right? Didn't they say no earmarks?
Yeah, and then the problem with that is people think of earmarks as pork, and I don't. I mean, I got McCormick County, like a couple of cars, some new guns, some new vests. To me, that's not pork. That's necessities that they need in those counties. I got Greenwood a testing tank. And the police chief told me that they were about 100. I think it said 85 cases behind when I got them that tank. They caught them up. They're like 4 cases behind now, so they can do their own testing. They're qualified. They're certified. So things like that to me are not pork. Those are things that I love to get for my district because I think it helps the whole state of South Carolina. So we're having to fight that too, and we're upset about that because a lot of these municipalities and towns, they've already made plans, for the money they think they might be going to get,
right?
And they're not going to get it, so it's going to be tough.
It is, and what do you think about going with a granting thing? Since we just slipped onto that one, what do you think about going to a granting thing for what would have been considered earmarks, changing that to grants. They're talking about making grants that you have to apply for a grant. The city, the municipality would apply for a grant.
To me, there's absolutely no difference in them. An earmark is if you're the county manager, McCormick, and you come to me and say we need this. The difference is I turn it in. With grants, the money is set aside for you before we even know what you need. But so I don't see where it helps to do anything, just changing the verbiage of an earmark and a grant. It's the same thing. If you need to buy 3 new cars, you don't care if I grant you the money or if what I don't like though is recurring. I don't like putting money into the budget. If I give $200,000 to Greenwood County Sheriff's Department, I don't think it should be stuck there for perpetuity, just to continue to go on. I think you should have to apply. In most applications, we like to have them in by October or November, and we go ahead and submit them, and we take them. They go through Ways and Means. So I've worked really hard to get those earmarks for these counties, and then to see it shot down just like that. And I don't understand the reasoning. I know we're trying to change the tax structure in South Carolina. We're trying to get our state tax down to 0. That's another complicated issue. I don't like to use the word punished. I don't think we're being. I hope we're not being punished to try to get us to sway a vote, because I'm going to vote the way I'm going to vote anyway. But it makes it hard on us. When you've made that request, you think you're going to get a couple of $100,000 to do what needs to be done in your county, and now I have to come back to you and say this is not going to happen. Why? I don't know. The money's not there, and it can be as simple as Ways and Means and the budget. People can just say, we're just going to not put it in this year. My personal feelings, I think it's being done to make it easier for us to get down to lower the rate on our state income tax. But one should have never affected the other in my mind. If you're not ready to do it, if you're not in a position where you can lower those, you shouldn't do it that quickly.
Well, I have a little problem with how they've done the state income tax, in that it is. Well, there's a couple of sides to it. One, our lower income people are the people that are going to pay. That are going to be ending up paying some, because they are redoing how they are fixing the deductions and everything. In fact, I understand in this new one they're taking out federal and state deductions, thinking that getting to a 0 income tax is the way to attract business. Honestly, I can't believe people are coming here to South Carolina day in and day out. We have lots of businesses wanting to come here. And on top of that, businesses, when they come into counties and whatnot, they get a lot of special concessions to come in anyways. It's a very, very competitive bidding process to get a business into a particular county, correct?
Oh, it's hard to get them to come in, and we spend tons of money in South Carolina to bring them in. But there's a lot of problems that I have with it. And whenever I hear them on the radio or hear them on TV or hear them in the house, they're throwing percentages around. That confuses me to death. Mm-hmm. What the taxpayer wants to know is, I make $35,000 a year. My wife makes $20,000 a year. Is mine going up or down?
Right.
Well, it may go up. It may be $51, and we've got models that we look at and we study. But I was actually in a caucus meeting, and they put 3 models up, and they were just asked, and they never tell us how to vote, but they just want to know where we stand. And people say, well, I like Model A, and somebody's, well, I like Model B, and ask me, what do you like? I said, I don't like any of them.
None of the above.
I don't like any of them. So they figured out that we weren't going to vote, so they ran new models, and in the new models, they are better, and I did vote for it, because my goal, I used to live in Tennessee. Tennessee has 0 state tax, and the way they pay for it is very simple. If you cut the income, you've got to raise the money somewhere else.
Exactly.
So they have higher state taxes on sales taxes, and they have hospitality taxes. I tell everybody, let the Yankees pay for it. That's fine with me. I go to Destin, Florida about twice a year. I don't know what the hospitality charge is. It's $15, maybe $30. I don't know. I don't look. I look on Expedia, and I pay $179 for the room, and then when I get my bill, it's $30. I don't care.
Right.
And I don't think most people do. But just imagine if we brought in $10, $15 a night for every hotel in South Carolina, what we could do with that money. We could take this to zero in no time flat. What I don't like about the state income tax, well, what I do like about it first is that the ultimate goal is to get it down to zero. Mm-hmm. What I don't like about it is dragging it out for 4 or 5 years, and it's very, very confusing.
Correct.
And we cannot sit down with you and you give me those facts about your income. And what we base it on now is adjusted gross income. We do away with the federal thing. Mm-hmm. Their excuse to bean counters is that, well, we want to get away from federal regulations. That's a dumb answer.
Yeah,
that don't make a bit of sense to me.
Exactly.
But all the taxpayer cares about is, this is what I make. How much is it going to affect me? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people say, oh, you're getting the millionaires rich. Now, there's actually some places people over $1 million but pay less, pay more, whatever. But here's the problem. Everybody wants to have a flat tax. And our goal is to get that down to 3.99 to start with before we get down to zero. But you're not going to believe this. If everybody wants a flat tax, everybody's got to pay.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. They don't like that. And that's the biggest opposition that we're getting is low-income individuals are saying, my taxes went up $50. I was paying zero, now I'm paying $200. Mm-hmm. We get that. So if you really want a flat tax, everybody has to pay. But everybody doesn't want to pay. I always say everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there.
Right, exactly.
And so that's the problem we're having, and we're getting a lot of pushback from lower income, and that's okay. They need to they have their voice. But I really believe, and it's from my personal experience in my entire life, I've been very blessed. I think I've received an unemployment check maybe two weeks in my life. Mm-hmm. But I remember feeling ashamed that I had to do that. I had a wife and a small child, and and I'm not judging people. I'm just saying for me, I can still remember feeling ashamed that I had to go do that I had to go through the paperwork. And there are people out there that need all the help we can give them, and we need to give them more. But personally, that bothered me to have to do that. If we had a flat tax in South Carolina of 3% and we had a federal tax of 10%, I'd be tickled to death with that. And I think most people, and I really believe most people want to have skin in the game. The guy that's making $20,000 and out there working his butt off to survive, I just don't think he'd have a problem with it. But that's just what I think. I can't base that on facts, but I think everybody wants to have skin in the game. But in order for this to work, some people are going to pay a little more. Some people are going to pay less. And they try to use divisiveness, well, it's the lower income and the rich guy. Mm-hmm. That's not the answer. That's not the way to find a solution. To find a solution is, to me, take it to zero, raise our state sales tax a penny, add a $15 or $20 or a percentage, whatever you need, onto the hotels, and I think we'll be fine. I think we can get zero. But the biggest problem I have with this, I've never had a constituent one time in 3 years complain about South Carolina state taxes. I don't think they're that outrageous anyway. To me, compared to federal, they're not that bad.
Right.
But we jump on that bandwagon and we say, well, we're going to lower the taxes for you. Well, we didn't lower the taxes. We reformed the taxes. So just tell the truth.
Right. Don't you think that a lot of this has to do with what's happening on the federal level and how Republicans are trying to, we've got a Doge operation going here in South Carolina. We're trying to be like that instead of being ourselves.
It's perception.
Right.
That's all that matters, right?
Right. Exactly.
It's like a magician.
Yeah, right.
Don't watch this hand, watch this hand, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's all, and we do that. I mean, but just admit it.
Yeah,
that's why I get in trouble sometimes for running my mouth, because ask me something, I'll give you an answer. But it's about perception. The perception is we are going to lower your taxes. The reality is it doesn't.
Right. Exactly. So I agree with you on that, Daniel, and I think that there's a lot of work. Now, the House passed a bill, right, on the taxes, and the Senate did not take it up. Am I correct? I think I'm correct on that.
Yeah, on my notes, I voted for it. It passed the House. Senate referred to Conferees and Finance.
Right, so that'll be coming up next year. Real quick, we've been talking about a lot of different things here this morning. One of the things that seems to have dropped out that really is something that I think would be a good thing is, what about property tax? That seems to have totally dropped out of the
Well, I've got a couple notes on that, and that was one of my questions for what could you have done more. But and my answer is reduce property taxes for the elderly, the vets, and first responders. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that we need the most, and we're doing a lot of things for first responders as far as life insurance, things like that. But I just feel like if I'm 71 years old. I've owned a home since I was 18. I've been paying property taxes forever.
Right.
But you have renters say, well, and I've heard legislators say, well, they rent and they're not paying. Yes, they are.
Yeah,
they're paying the landlord. It's
right.
So if you're a renter, if you're an owner, it don't matter. You paid.
Well, if you're a renter, it's being passed on to you through the rent that you pay.
Yeah, you're paying more because those property taxes are higher than they are on a homeowner, right?
But yes, so go ahead. As far as you said,
so to me, and John and I talk about this all the time. I said we need to come up, and that's not in the works right now.
Right.
So that's something I want to bring up. But to get back to this, something we did do, and the county council's having a fit about this, Theo and all the guys up there, and I understand it's going to be a problem for them, is that we reduced boat evaluation taxes down to half by removing the motor in the equation.
Well, that really was double taxation, wasn't it? By doing the motor and the boat.
Yeah, they're treating them as a separate entity.
Right.
When you made the purchase, you normally buy them together. But the numbers were so astronomical, I didn't believe them. I heard of a guy that paid $6,000 property taxes on his boat. I thought, that's a lie. I don't believe that. So I started calling my friends. I have a boat, but mine's a little cheap one. But I have friends that have high-dollar boats. And I said, is this true? Is this really happening? The guy said, how about $4,800? Bought a new boat, $4,800, his first year tax bill. He said, it's 3 times higher than my house. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Right.
So I got to, we began to look into it. And, it's just, they treat it as a luxury tax, okay? Well, if you're going to do that, how about anybody drives a van, like your little gray one outside?
Right.
You can afford it. You got money, you can afford to buy that van.
Well, what about...
we're going to add you up, or golf carts, or...
Yeah, well,
where
then
does it stop?
Can take it from the other end, you've got a golf cart, so therefore you should tax that.
Yeah.
RVs, how much are you going to tax those exceptional amounts to? Maybe they do.
It never ends. And I'll give you, this is a real example, and if you're on the county council or you're, that's fine for you to hear this. I've got a lot of friends that register their airplanes in Delaware because they don't want to pay the high tax in Greenwood County on their airplanes.
Right.
So they register the LLC there, the airplane's registered there. And Rossi used to, when she was the airport manager, we would talk about it. And she'd say, well, y'all really shouldn't do that, or blah, blah. I say, well, I'll give you an answer. Lower the taxes on them.
Right.
People will do it. I was speaking with someone in McCormick County, and they said, we'd rather have 5% of something than 0% of nothing, or 10% of nothing.
Right.
And he said, we're willing to negotiate with somebody on their airplanes. And the reason I'm thinking about that, we're remodeling that airport over there. He said, if you've got a boat or an airplane, why can't we just look at it as an individual thing and say, well, if you've got your boat, your airplane registered in Delaware, bring it to here. Our normal rate's 5%. We'll give you 3% if you'll sign a 5-year contract, or something like that. So there's ways to work around it. But it happens. So what happens, people register their boats in Florida. They register their airplanes in Delaware to get around the system. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it works.
Right.
And people do it. So if I had something to do with the budget, first of all, I don't like luxury taxes at all. I think $4,800 for you to go buy a boat and you're paying taxes is just unreasonable. So I said all that to say this.
You pay a sales tax on it, though, right?
Yeah, you've already paid the sales taxes too. Yeah.
Right.
So that passed the House.
But it did not pass the Senate.
Yeah.
See, I think sometimes, I'm just going to say this, Dan.
Under review in the Senate.
Huh?
It's under review in the Senate.
But see, I think sometimes you guys are in cahoots. I'll just say this because I think that the House passes something, sends it over to the Senate. It's not something that's popular maybe in the Senate. So they say, well, we'll wait till next year. Then you got something in the Senate goes to the House and they go, we'll take it up next year. I think you guys are in cahoots sometimes.
I don't know. I do go to Mike Gambrell, and we make mistakes, believe it or not.
Right.
In the House, we make mistakes sometimes. And I have breakfast with Mike Gambrell every Tuesday morning when we're in session, and I'll go to him and say, Mike, man, we messed it up. He said, what you want me to do? I said, this thing needs to die a slow death in the Senate.
Okay,
I don't care what
I'm
you
right.
do.
Okay,
but usually there's something wrong with it. You know?
Right.
But they look at things different. There's a lot of, I call them statesmen, you know. Well, they call themselves the upper chamber.
Right, yes, the deliberative body.
Yeah, I hope Senator Garrett's listening, but they call themselves the upper chamber. But our chambers are actually the same. And I have a transit at my house, and I think I'll take my transit down and measure their floor level against our floor level. I think they're pretty much the same. But they like themselves, and we kid about that. But, you know, all we can do is all we can do. If we pass it in the House, it may be a good, clean bill, and they just don't like it in the Senate. And it works both ways. They send stuff to us that we don't like. But they're statesmen. They debate a lot. They talk a lot.
Right.
I tell people we're more like Monday Night Wrestling. We get over and fight it out, and we fight it out in committee. And that's really where the work is done. I would suggest to people, if you want to watch us in committee. You can watch that live on the internet. That's really where the work's done. And come down and give testimony. We had something that concerned the realtors. And I bet we had 5 realtors from Greenwood that came down and talked to us about, you know, how they felt on the bill and how it affects them. So we do take a lot of testimony. Since I sit on wildlife, I deal with DNR a lot. But we have hunters come in. We have fishermen come in. And we don't always agree with what DNR wants. You know, so it's good that they do get involved. And that's one of the biggest ways is when a bill's coming up that you're concerned about, give me a call, and I'll tell you when it's going to be heard. You can come down and give testimony. And it's a lot of trouble, and I appreciate people doing that. They may spend, you know, a whole day to come down, wait their turn, give testimony, and then we may or may not vote against you or with you, but at least we hear what you have to say. And most of the time, we side with the public. That means more to me than what DNR says or the officials say or what the county councilman says or anything. Right. I care more about what the people say and how they feel.
Exactly. Well, we have been at this for a pretty good while, Daniel. I think we ought to wrap it up. Would you like to say anything in closing here this morning?
No, just the fact that I do want people to get more involved. And I like it when you call. I give out my personal phone number, and that surprises people. They'll call me and I'll answer the phone. Hello. They're like, I'm trying to reach Daniel Gibson's office. So my phone number is 864-396-0245, 864-396-0245. And that's the best way to reach me, especially now that we're out of session. Even when we're in session, if you call my office in Columbia, you're just going to get my secretary just going to get a note to me. But I love talking to people, and I love getting your input.
On that number too, correct?
Yes, they can text me there. Yeah,
cell phone, so they can text you.
Yeah, and I do respond. You know, normally within a day I can get back to you, and I do want to hear what you have to say. That's pretty much it. Just again, thank you for all that you do. I tell people all the time, you're the most politically minded person and probably astute than anybody I know. So.
Well, I don't know about
that. But I appreciate that. And come to visit us. I actually have people come down to I'm amazed. They come to the Capitol, and they've never been there before, and we'll set up a tour for them. Had someone come by the other day, came by early, and they actually got to have breakfast with us. So, you know, a lot going on. If you've never visited the Capitol, please give me a call, and we'll set up a time for you to come down and visit.
That sounds great. Well, you have been listening to Daniel Gibson here this morning. I hope that you have gotten some answers. I certainly hope this thing with the school boards, the funding for this coming session will get resolved with a positive note. And we certainly talked about a lot of the pluses and the minuses here. And I think the big thing is it is up to us, the general public, to be informed. And I think it's up to our legislators to make sure that we know what's going on down there in Columbia. And so reach out to each and every one of your legislators. Make sure they know how you feel about things. Daniel, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, feel free to call me if you're happy about things. If you're not, call John or Billy.
Okay.
They'll take care of you.
If you're happy, raise your hand. Yeah, okay, we can sing that little song. And if you're not, well, sorry. But anyways, that's going to do it for us here today. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good day. No show this afternoon. Had a cancellation, so we're taking a bye. But I will be back tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon starts the Festival of Flowers with Brittany Dunlap will be with us talking about the upcoming Women's Ladies Luncheon that will be coming up very soon. So get your tickets to that. That's going to do it for us. Bye-bye, everybody.